right. Hello, and thank you for watching. Today I'm going to be doing a pour painting over the surface of a 3D object, in this case a sphere made out of plaster. Let's take a look at the ingredients we need. First, I have some plain styrofoam cups and popsicle sticks. In each one of these cups I've put a single color of acrylic paint and combined it with something we call a flow extender. The flow extender makes it so that the paint has a very fluid consistency and will run easily across the surface that we're working on. So for today's colors, I have a primary yellow, I have plum, and I have titanium white. And to show you how I mix this, I also have festive green. I'm going to be taking the green. I've already shaken this up ahead of time to make sure the ingredients are mixed, and I'm pouring some into the cup. I want this to be a primarily green piece, so I've stirred a significant portion into the cup. Next, we need our flow extender. I use Floetrol. It's a lot less expensive than some of the premium art supplies like Liquitex Flow Aid or the Golden Acrylic Colors GAC 800. So again, I've shaken this up ahead of time, and now I'm going to pour about the same amount of Floetrol as I've poured paint. Okay? With the cap firmly back on, I'm going to stir this together until it's all a single color with no streaks or marbling or anything like that. It's just one nice consistent color. You can see in here that I'm scraping the sides of this cup with my popsicle stick. This is to ensure that I don't have any amounts of paint or any amounts of Floetrol, the flow extender, that aren't mixed together. I want it all to be exactly the same amount of everything mixed together. So that looks ready. We've got the paint and we've got the flow extender. This has a decent consistency to it, but I want it to be a little runnier. So, what I have in this bottle is a mix of 50% Floetrol and 50% water. Now, you might be asking why I have a separate bottle with Floetrol and water if I just added Floetrol to the paint. The reason we don't add Floetrol and water to the paint together is because acrylic paint, the acrylic has a special bonding agent, which means when the paint dries, acrylic needs this bonding agent so that it doesn't crack or look unpleasant when the paint dries. So first we add the Floetrol, which thins the paint, but it keeps the bonding agent together, so your paint will still come out nice and smooth. Then when that's all finished, we can add Floetrol plus water to thin it even more, but this won't risk cracking your acrylic paints. This step is not always necessary for craft acrylic paints, the ones you get in the little cylinder tubes, but it is absolutely necessary if you're going to be working with a thicker paint, like a heavy body acrylic paint. For the most part, people just use craft acrylics. This is a craft acrylic, and you might have seen smaller craft acrylic tubes as well. So again, now that I have the 50-50 water Floetrol mix, I'm going to stir this up one more time, get it nice and green, nice solid color in there. Ooh, that looks good. Okay, I'm stirring this, and as I'm stirring, you might notice that my hands are gently rotating the styrofoam cup I'm holding. This is again just to make sure that all of the paint is rotated, that I don't miss any spots, and to help mix the contents as I work. Okay, so now to recap, we have yellow, white, this burgundy plum color, and festive green. I'm going to be pouring each of these into this single cup so we can prepare our pour painting. Before I do that, I'm going to add something called Silicone dimethicone. I've poured it into this little dropper bottle so I can control how much is poured into each cup. And the silicone dimethicone makes little cells, we call it. Let me show you something. Here's a painting I did a little while ago. You see all these little bubble shapes, these little circular kind of polyagonal shapes. These are what we refer to as cells. This is when paint from the bottom rises through paint to the top and it pushes it out, creating these little edges with the color inside of it. This is a cell. Silicone dimethicone helps greatly with getting paint to rise from underneath up through the surface. A big part of painting in this style of pour painting, is to understand the density of paint. White paint is almost always considered the most dense, meaning it's the heaviest. It'll sink through other paint layers. So when we're preparing a cup, white will go in first. It goes in first because as we turn the cup upside down, now the white is on top and it will sink down through the other colors to help encourage the formation of cells like this. So before I pour this cup, before I get this ready, I'm going to add a little silicone dimethicone. You don't need too much and it'll just be a mess. I'm going to add just a few drops into my white paint, some into my yellow paint, some even less into this plum color paint because this has the least amount of paint right now. So just a little drop. Boop. And then finally into my green. Now silicone isn't completely necessary for pour painting. You will need acrylic paint, you do need flow extender to make it nice and fluid. But silicone is only there so that you can get those cell formations really easy. If you don't want those, you don't need the silicone. Next, I'm just going to gently stir the silicone into the paint. I'm not trying to make this completely stirred up with the rest of the paint like we did with the Floetrol and the water. I just want to mix it enough that it's present throughout the whole cup. Keep in mind we're also going to be pouring this into a bigger cup and then we're going to be turning that cup over, so the silicone will get plenty mixed by the time we're done. Ready to see how we make a dirty cup? Dirty pour? First, we have the white paint. I'm going to pour about half of my cup into this and set it aside. Next we have yellow. And here's a trick. When you start combining colors, you want to consider how high you pour the paint cup and how much you pour into it. If I pour it along the side, well, it goes in there nice and soft and you can see it sits on the surface. It doesn't combine much, it doesn't mix. But if I were to take another color of paint and pour it from very high, well, the extra velocity of the paint pushes it far in there and stirs it up more. I'm going to start adding some greens, get this color in there. I'm going to float a little bit across the surface and then lift it so it stirs the contents. This is all my green. You can see little cells are already starting to form from inside the paint cup. Add a little more yellow. Hold that real high so it starts mixing. At this point I want to start mixing it higher and higher because the paint cup is getting fuller and fuller. So I have my yellow, I have my plum, and now I'm going to add the last of the white just carefully along the top. Okay. As you look at the little dirty pour cup there, I'm going to set these off to the side and let's take a look at a technique called a flip cup pour. A dirty pour means you have your paint like this and you just dump it over your canvas. There's advantages to this, but today we're going to be looking at a flip cup pour. With the flip cup, careful. With the flip cup, you take the surface you're working with and you're going to set it on top of your cup. Then you hold it together nice and tight. Try and make sure it's center, especially if you're working on a big sphere like this. Try and make sure it's center. You flip it over while holding the paint cup together. I'm going to set this back down I'm holding the paint cup on real firm this whole time. And here we go. Let's see how this works. Ooh. Woohoo! Wow, that is lovely. Okay. At this point, it all depends on which artist you're working with, who you're watching, what they want to do. I prefer to let my work for itself. I don't like to manipulate it too much if at all possible, and I like to see what kind of combinations come up just on its own, what the paint likes to do. So I'm not going to play with this too much, but I do want to kind of guide the paint at the bottom because there's a few sections here that the paint is going around. I want the paint to cover the entire canvas. So I'm going to take a little of the paint here from the bottom, help guide it, just gently dabbing it. I want to avoid being too firm or mixing it too much, because then the paint will just become one gross color, just mushed together. Okay, just dab, doing this real carefully. Okay. You might not even be able to see the bottom of the sphere when we're done with this, but I like to be thorough. Since now I'm working on this side, I'm going to pull some paint from that side so the color combinations will match the general aesthetic. Careful not to get my apron up in this.